Hi, everyone. My name is Madhukar, and I'm coming to you today from California, where it's still pretty early morning, but it's really great to be here. I love talking about PLG, product-led growth, and that's what I'm here to talk about today. But before I get too further down the path of PLG and the tech stack, first a little bit about me, like what do I do, what I've done before that makes me kind of sort of qualified for product-led growth. I actually started off my career as a developer a long time ago, based in the Bay Area. And I've worked in a number of different technology startups, started with companies like Zora, which started a subscription business, Redis. And then from a developer, I turned into a product manager. And I used to run product strategy for all customer experience products at Oracle. And then finally, I moved from product management then to product marketing. So I made the full circle all the way from a developer to a product manager to product marketer in technology startups. And I've kind of seen the evolution with the front row seat in terms of how products are made and then all the way to how are they managed and then they marketed. And more recently, I am working in a startup called DevRev, which was founded in October of 2020 with one of the largest seed rounds of $50 million by the former founders of Nutanix, Dheeraj and Manoj. And we have VCs from Vinod Khosla to Naveen from Mayfield. And we just launched our beta. And I'll talk a little bit more about what we are building out, because one of the things that we are using for our own tech stack is something that we have built for ourselves as well. So let's get started in terms of what is an ideal tech stack for product-led growth. And like I said, this has been an accumulation of learning lessons over the last few years. For me personally, as I've worked in different organizations, small as well as large, and mostly technology-oriented companies, where I've worked both in product management and product marketing, and I've seen how the overall organization works, both in a smaller marketing organization where it's about 20 people, to Nutanix, where it's about 220 people, to Oracle, where it was at least 500 different people and multiple different organizations working together. So if you think about a classic marketing organization, I feel you can kind of club what the entire marketing organization does in two different big buckets, right? One is inbound, and the other one, I would say, is outbound. And inbound is typically, it used to be phone, but mostly now it's website. When people come to your website, you convert them to signups, and then from signups to free users to paid user and so on. And if you're running campaigns, then you are using things like Eloqua or Marketo, or you're doing events, or you're doing social. So there's a lot of outbound stuff that you do, and you do a bunch of other tools associated with it. And at the end of the day, in a traditional or a sales-led organization, the marketing's main metric at that point is you're creating leads, or you're creating marketing qualified leads, which you then take over, hand over to the sales team, and then they try to convert them into a sales qualified lead. So within this stack, if I were to really simplify in terms of what a typical marketing stack looks like, you have a website, and then you have some sort of a database, whether it's a prospect database or it's a database of your content through your CMS. You also have your CRM, so your website is talking to your CRM, something like a Salesforce or a HubSpot. And then there's an email automation tool. And that email automation tool could be anywhere from MailChimp to it could be something bigger like Eloqua or Marketo. And just to paint the picture of the different choices that you have at these three layers, at the website level, of course, if you're in a startup, the most common ones that I've seen is WordPress. And I've worked in companies like Redis and all, where WordPress is still used, even though it's PHP. In fact, somewhere I was reading that about 25% of all corporate websites is actually created on WordPress. And WordPress actually has both your CMS as well as the presentation layer. But as you kind of go towards the enterprise side, then you have Adobe Experience Manager, which has its entire suite of content management system as well as presentation layer and so on. And similarly on the email system, if you're in a startup, you're most likely using something like a MailChimp or a SendGrid. But as you go into the enterprise level, I've seen companies use Marketo, which is now Adobe, or Eloqua, which is, of course, Oracle. And similarly, in the CRM space, If you're a startup, you're probably using HubSpot, Zoho, one of those, or maybe even Airtable these days. And then as you grow into enterprise scale, you have something like Salesforce. And over a period of time, if you start to think about three important aspects of what I would call PLG, is your code, your content, and your identity. Code is a bunch of developers who have written code for your website to work, whether it's in WordPress, Drupal, or AEM, doesn't really matter. You still have to write code. And that's typically where your developers live. And then your content is lying in your content management system. And that's typically where your content marketers live. They're the ones who are writing that content either in a UI or in some places in startups like ours, you might be doing it in Markdown, which is then pulled over into your website through some sort of an APIs. But the bigger disconnect starts to happen when you are sending out email, you're doing email campaigns, you're doing ad campaigns, and now the identity of the ones that you're marketing is sitting either in an email system or the identity of who you have already marketed to, and maybe even prospects, is sitting in your CRM system. And typically, when that happens, your prospects and your sales teams are sitting in your CRM. And over a period of time, there is now a divergence of your identity between the systems, even in your front office, between your email system, between your CRM. And now if you add support on top of it, your support has its own identity as well. So you start to run into issues like, hey, why did we send out an email to somebody that has already moved off of our platform or did not renew? Or why did we send out an email who just signed up when we are trying to spend less? So a lot of those issues start to happen over a period of time, because at the end of the day, the metric that typically a traditional marketing organization is trying to get to is around an MQL. But in a product-led growth, if you really think about it, your product is not something that sits outside of your website. In a way it does, but it's still digital, it's code. In many ways, it's sitting adjacent to your website. A lot of companies, like if you look at Figma or Miro, for example, your app itself is app.figma.com, or whatever your product that you're selling is basically in the same subdomain. So from an end visitor perspective, somebody like me who goes to the website, if I go to figma.com, when I click on login, it's seamless. It takes me straight into Figma where it asks me to sign up. And then from that point onwards, it's a zero-touch experience of how I start to use the product. And more importantly, when users in a product-led company or a PLG emphasized company comes in, you now have another set of identity, which is your free users coming in. So how do you tie all of that? How do you tie who have I marketed to, who have responded to my campaigns, who've actually signed up? And this is not even at the attribution level. This is just to understand how is the journey happening on the website, and then continuing over to my application, which by itself has its own services, it has its own front end, it has its own data. And there are other issues that start to happen over a period of time, which is not just related to the design and the consistency of the user experience, but it's the overall user experience in general. Like when I come to the website, from that point onwards to when I sign up for the free product and I start using the product, is the journey feels like it's the part of the same company or not. And the reason for that is your users, which are probably the most important part of a PLG growth engineering team, is now no longer just on your website, it's actually also on your application or product. So now you have to worry about your email, which is the identity database for prospects. Then you have to worry about CRM. And now you also have to worry about the actual application. And you have to worry about authentication within the application. How does that connect back to the website? And more importantly, you're no longer thinking about MQL anymore. You're thinking about what is a product qualified lead. And when I say what is a product qualified lead, it essentially means show me all the folks who have come to my website and they have shown interest into my product, so I can basically try to nudge them to a paid version of the product. And I know I'm running out of time, so please let me know when I need to stop. So I'll try to speed up a little bit. So here, what I wanted to do is to break down the PLG architecture or the tech stack into three essential layers: the presentation layer, the engagement layer, and the identity layer. And then I want to talk a little bit about what are the different requirements, and based on our experience, what we have ended up building. So from presentation layer, the thing that you want to do is you want to have separation of code and content, because your developers is a different persona that's working on code, and content is a different persona working on the content marketing side of things. You want it to be super fast these days, mobile friendly, so it has to be SEO friendly too, so that you get a lot of organic traffic coming in. And you want some sort of an automated deployments. I've worked in organizations where a simple change on the website required like 1 week time and approval process. We wanted to be in a place where if we decided to make a change on the website today, it's a simple pull request on GitHub that goes and creates a preview, somebody approves it, and it goes and does a build on the production. So the new kind of architecture for the website, which what we have started to see and what we have started to use itself, is based around React. And there are two big frameworks for that. There's Gatsby and Next.js. And the simple phenomenon over there is that you write your code in JavaScript in React, and it spits out, if you're using static site generator like Gatsby, it spits out HTML, CSS, and JavaScript that's sitting directly in the browser. At the build time, it will go and pull out the content from a headless CMS. And for us, we use an open source version called Strappy. And you can also pull in content and other items from webhooks or through APIs. So what this effectively does is now your developers are working on React, whereas the content managers are working on the headless CMS side of things. So the next thing I would say that is really important as part of the overall experience is the engagement layer. And there are three, I would say, key requirements. There's obviously a lot more, but three key requirements. One, it should be like a real-time communication platform that's embedded inside your website as well as your app. It should be able to instrument and tell you in real time what your users are doing so that you can react to it also in real time. And then finally, you should be able to use that conversation platform to be able to nudge the user to say, hey, go finish your onboarding. And they should be able to nudge you if they have questions related to the product and maybe even support. So this is where we use our own product. There's a product called, of course, the DevRev platform. We have something called Plug, or product-led user growth. And essentially what it does is it's a conversation chatbot that you embed into your website and application. And it allows you to go talk directly to your developers. That's why we call our company DevRev, because we bring developers closer to the customers through the product. And any new support issue that happens is now directly connected to the product in the backend. And it's connected to the issues, tickets, bugs, features, and capabilities that your entire team is working on together. This also gives you instrumentation. It also gives you the ability to do nudges as well. And then finally, the last piece I would say, which is probably one of the most important pieces of any PLG architecture, is the identity piece, the identity of your user, whether that user is somebody that you've marketed to, you plan to market to, or somebody who's now a free user or even a paid customer as well. And the way we looked at it was we needed three parts of it. One, we needed a flexible schema, so a schema-less database architecture. It should be able to store the attributes of who I am, what have I, whether I am a community member, whether I'm a free user, so attribute defining who I am. And then a list of events like a time series database. When I came to the website, did I go click on a webinar? Did I click on a video? Did I go straight for the trial? What did I do once I'm in the trial, and so on? So attributes plus events. And finally, it should be agnostic to the different sources and destination, because if I can talk to a webhook, if I can consume a webhook, and I can publish to a webhook, then that's the ideal system. So we started looking at a bunch of different systems. And of course, the one that really jumped out, which a lot of companies have started to use today, is a CDP, or a customer data platform. And if you look at the architecture of a CDP, that's typically what you see on the screen is what it looks like. You have your mobile app and you add an SDK in there. You have a website, so you add an SDK or a JavaScript library, or you have a server-side application and you put in your APIs for CDP, and then eventually all the data starts to flow into one single place. But that's not your just the system of record of your data. It's actually an air traffic controller. You can then take parts of that data and send it to different destinations. You could send it to, for us, the most important piece is a webhook, which we can then utilize to go send it to Slack, for example, or I can also send all of this data to a data warehouse. So when we started to look at this, we looked at a bunch of different options. We settled with Segment so far. And on the data warehouse side, we chose BigQuery, which is Google for now. So now if I take all three aspects of this and combine into a true PLG stack, which we've started to see a lot of other companies do similar things, then this is what it looks like. You have the website, which is React JS based, and for us, that's Gatsby. That has SDKs for segments. So anytime somebody comes to the website, we are able to get the attributes and the events, which flows into the segment. But the glue to our application is the authentication service that we have created. And so when you come in and sign in on the web page, it's one single authentication. There's not another one for your application, not one for signing up for a webinar, not one for signing up for a white paper or any of those things. It's just one sign up, and it goes to the same authentication service, which goes into our identity database, but it also goes through CDP, which is Segment. Now within CDP, you can actually go create different audiences, and those audiences could be based off of different attributes, and it could be based off of different events. So I could, at any potential time, I could say, show me anybody who came in, who logged in the last 24 hours, but did not finish the onboarding. And I can take that audience and send it over to SendGrid. So I can then send them an email saying, hey, if you do the second step, there is an incentive or a reward for you. And that piece of orchestration lies at the top. And that orchestration layer for us is what we use. We use something called Pipedream, also open source, also Node.js based. So in this architecture, now if you look at your identity, presentation, and engagement, there is a single layer, and there's a single system of record for each. And now if I combine all of this with the conversation chatbot, then truly this becomes a product-led tech stack. And just to give you a little bit of idea, this is my last slide, and then we'll see if there are any open questions. What we are building out is what we call as a CRM for developers. And the thesis behind that is today we feel in a product-led company, the center of gravity is slowly moving towards the developers and the makers. And if I'm a developer today, what tends to happen is I'm either working on fixing things or I'm working on new things or features and capabilities. And somebody in support is telling me what to work on, or somebody in product management team is telling me what to work on. Me as a developer, I have no clue how users are using it. So what we are building out is a CRM for developers, or Dev CRM, which is a system of record for your product. And it connects your developer work on one end and your customer interactions on the other. So what you see on the screen is what we call a feature within the product called Trails. It shows you all the APIs and services that we have created on the left-hand side. But on the right-hand side, it's connected to all the services, it's connected to all the features and capabilities that my customers are using. And as I drill down into each one of these, it's going to tell me in real time how my customers are using these, and what are the issues and the tickets and the bugs associated with it. So I can go at the product feature level or at a service level and be able to see how much of my customers are using it, how are they affected, and if my service goes down, or if I created a brand new feature, or if I did one bug fix, how does it affect the overall customer base and the business impact and the revenue as such. So we just opened up for beta, and you can go and sign up for it. But I wanted to end here to give you an idea of what a PLG tech stack looks like today. And I'm happy to take any questions if you have.
Thank you, Madhukar. Unfortunately, we are running out of time, and we won't be able to do Q&A.